Karma is a bitch, Mom and Dad. I appreciate how you always included me in your childhood drama, Lily muttered, staring at the crumpled letter in her hand. She had long been the unwilling adult in her family, forced to grow up faster than any child should. Emily and Robert, her parents, had always acted more like children themselves, bickering, playing petty games, and expecting Lily to mediate their constant disputes. Now the call she had been waiting for had come. They were both in the same nursing home, elderly and in need of care. The irony wasn't lost on her. They had spent her entire childhood relying on her to be the responsible one. And now, life had flipped the roles. But she wasn't rushing to their aid. Instead, she sat back, sipping her drink, and let the cold numbness wash over her. I hope you two can work it out and enjoy each other's company for the rest of your wretched lives, she thought bitterly. Lily had built walls around her heart long ago, hardened by years of neglect and emotional turmoil. But her world shifted when a letter from her parents' lawyer arrived, revealing a hidden truth about their past. They hadn't always been the careless, reckless people she remembered. Once they had been madly in love, but a tragic event had torn them apart. This revelation pulled Lily into a reluctant investigation into their past, and what she uncovered made her question everything she had believed about them. Through old letters, photographs, and a forgotten journal, she began to see her parents not just as failed caregivers, but as flawed, wounded people struggling with their own unhealed trauma. Amid this emotional upheaval, James, a man from Lily's past, re-entered her life. He had once loved her deeply, but she had pushed him away, unable to let anyone close. Their reunion was tentative, full of unspoken words and unresolved feelings. Yet, as they spent more time together, Lily found herself drawn to him again. James had always seen through her tough exterior, and in one quiet moment by the lake, he reminded her of the strength she carried. "You've always been stronger than you think, Lily," he said softly. "But strength doesn't mean not feeling. It means feeling everything and choosing to keep going." His words stirred something deep inside her, breaking through the barriers she had so carefully constructed. For the first time in years, Lily allowed herself to feel not just the anger and resentment, but the sadness, the grief, and the love she had buried for so long. As she pieced together the fragments of her parents' lives, Lily discovered a devastating truth about her own identity. The trauma that had torn them apart was tied to her. Her mother had suffered from severe postpartum depression after her birth, and her father had never forgiven himself for not being able to help her. Their unresolved pain had poisoned their relationship with each other and with Lily, leaving her to grow up in the chaos of their unspoken guilt and shame. This revelation shook Lily to her core. All her life, she had believed they didn't care, but now she saw the truth. They had been too broken to know how to love her the way she needed. With this new understanding, Lily made the difficult decision to visit her parents in the nursing home. The confrontation was raw, filled with years of pent-up emotion. Her mother, frail and fading, barely recognized her, while her father, bedridden and mute, could only offer a look of regret. The nurse's words haunted her. "Your mother asks about you every day. She doesn't always remember your name, but she knows you're important to her." It was enough to crack open the last pieces of Lily's hardened heart. In the end, Lily didn't find full forgiveness, nor did she forget the pain they had caused her, but she chose to let go of the bitterness that had weighed her down for so long. She sat with them in their final days, holding their hands, not to fix the past, but to offer a sense of closure, for them and for herself. When the call came weeks later that both her parents had passed away within hours of each other, she felt a strange peace. Standing at their graves, James by her side, she whispered, "Maybe karma isn't always a bitch after all." The story closes with Lily walking away from the cemetery, her hand in James's, ready to embrace the love she had once rejected and the life ahead of her, no longer burdened by the weight of her past. As Lily left the cemetery, the weight she had carried for so many years felt lighter, as if the ghosts of her past were finally at rest. The quiet breeze brushed against her face, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to breathe deeply, unburdened. James walked beside her in silence, his presence comforting and familiar. He had always been there, patiently waiting, even when she had pushed him away. But now, with her parents' chapter closed, Lily felt a new chapter unfolding, one where she could finally allow herself to live, to love, and to feel without fear of being hurt again. They drove back to her small apartment in the city, the evening casting golden light through the windows. As they stepped inside, the air was different, lighter. There was no longer the lingering shadow of anger or regret hanging over her. James moved to the kitchen, making them both tea, and Lily sat at the table, her fingers tracing the wood grain. Memories of her childhood have flickered through her mind, not just the bad ones, but the fleeting moments of joy, like when her mother would bake cookies on a Sunday afternoon, or when her father would swing her high into the air, laughing. James placed a steaming cup in front of her, his eyes soft as he studied her. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. Lily nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I think I will be," she whispered, surprising herself with the realization that it was true. For so long, she had been consumed by anger and pain, but now she could see the whole picture. Her parents' mistakes, their brokenness, but also their love, hidden beneath layers of unresolved trauma. They had been flawed, deeply so, but they had been human. And for the first time, she felt something close to forgiveness. Over the next few weeks, Lily and James grew closer. Their relationship, once fractured by her fear of intimacy, blossomed in a way that surprised even her. James wasn't pushing or pulling. He was simply there, steady and supportive, offering her a kind of love that felt safe, unlike anything she had known before. They spent quiet evenings together, talking about everything and nothing, cooking dinner side by side, and sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence, letting the world pass by without the need for words. But life wasn't done with its surprises. One afternoon, as Lily was going through some of the last remnants of her parents' belongings, she stumbled upon another letter, this one addressed to her. It had been hidden in the back of an old jewelry box, worn and yellow with age. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper, recognizing her mother's handwriting immediately. "Dearest Lily, I know I haven't been the mother you deserved. I've failed you in more ways than I can count, and there's no excuse for that. I've spent so many nights lying awake, thinking about the things I should have said, the things I should have done differently. But more than anything, I need you to know that I have always loved you. In my own broken way, I love you more than I could ever express. Your father did too, though we were both too caught up in our own pain to show it properly. I wish I could go back and change things, but I can't. All I can do is hope that one day you'll understand. I'm sorry, my darling girl, for everything. I hope you find happiness, the kind I could never give you. I hope you find love. You deserve it more than anyone I know. Love, Mom." Tears blurred Lily's vision as she finished reading. She sat there for a long time, the letter resting in her lap, her heart pounding with emotions she couldn't quite name. The anger she had held onto for so long was dissolving, replaced by a deep, aching sadness, and, beneath that, a flicker of understanding. Her mother had been trapped, just like she had been. They were both victims of circumstances they couldn't fully control, but in the end, her mother had loved her, however imperfectly. That night, as she lay in bed beside James, Lily held the letter close, feeling something shift inside her. She wasn't fully healed. Healing was a process, and she knew it would take time. But for the first time, she felt like she was on the path to it. She had spent so many years locking her heart away, afraid of being hurt, but now she was ready to let it open, to feel, to love, and to allow herself to be loved in return. The next morning, she woke up early, sunlight filtering through the curtains. She felt a quiet sense of peace she hadn't known in years. James stirred beside her, his arm draped casually over her waist, and she smiled, a genuine smile that came from a place of contentment. "Good morning," he mumbled, still half asleep. "Good morning," she replied, her voice soft, full of something new, hope. As she got out of bed and looked out the window, the city waking up beneath her, Lily realized that life, for all its pain and hardship, still had so much to offer. There were new beginnings, second chances, and the possibility of happiness, even after years of darkness. For the first time in a long time, Lily was ready to embrace that. She was ready to move forward, not just with James, but with herself. Ready to live, to love, and to forgive, not just her parents, but herself. Because life wasn't about perfection. It was about the messy, imperfect moments that made up the journey. And for Lily, that journey was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, Lily embraced the quiet rhythm of her new life. The weight of her past was still there, but it no longer pressed down on her with the same intensity. It had softened, becoming a memory she could carry with a sense of understanding rather than resentment. She found solace in her daily routine, work, quiet evenings with James, and, occasionally, sorting through the remnants of her parents' belongings. Each item she touched felt like a thread in the fabric of her history, and while some memories still stung, others brought a surprising warmth. One Saturday afternoon, while organizing an old box of photographs, she stumbled upon a picture that made her pause. It was a black and white photo of her parents, long before the bitterness took root. They were standing together on a beach, Emily laughing as Robert held her close, his arms wrapped protectively around her waist. They looked so young, so carefree, and in that moment, they seemed like two people in love, unburdened by the tragedies that would later define their lives. Lily studied the picture, tracing the outline of her mother's face with her fingertips, wondering what they had been like before everything had gone wrong. That evening, Lily took the photo with her to dinner with James. They had started a tradition of cooking together every Saturday, something simple, like pasta or stir-fry, and tonight was no different. The kitchen was filled with the scent of garlic and fresh herbs as they moved in comfortable harmony, chopping vegetables and stirring pots. James had a way of making even the simplest moments feel special, and Lily found herself smiling more often, laughing at his terrible jokes and leaning into the warmth he provided. When they sat down to eat, Lily placed the photograph on the table between them. "This is them," she said softly, her voice a little hesitant. "My parents, before everything got complicated." James looked at the picture, then back at her. "They look happy," he said, his tone gentle. "They weren't once," Lily replied, her gaze lingering on the photo. "I never really thought about them like that before. I always saw them as, well, as a mess. But I think before I came along, they had something good, something real. They just didn't know how to hold on to it." James reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "Sometimes people don't know how to deal with their pain," he said quietly. "It doesn't excuse what they did, but maybe it helps to understand." Lily nodded, grateful for his presence. "I think I'm starting to understand that," she admitted. "It's strange, but the more I learn about them, the less angry I feel. I'm not saying I forgive them completely, but I don't know. It feels different now. Lighter." James smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "That's a good thing. You deserve that kind of peace." As they continued their dinner, the conversation shifted to lighter topics: work, plans for the weekend, a movie they had been meaning to watch. But even as they laughed and talked, the photograph remained on the table, a quiet reminder of the past that Lily was finally beginning to make peace with. The next few months were a time of slow healing for Lily. She started seeing a therapist, something she had avoided for years, and found that talking about her feelings, her anger, her grief, her confusion, helped in ways she hadn't expected. She allowed herself to feel the full range of emotions she had buried for so long, and though it was painful at times, it was also liberating. With each session, she peeled back another layer of her past, and with each layer, she felt herself becoming lighter and freer. Her relationship with James deepened as well. He was patient with her, never pushing too hard, always giving her space to process her emotions at her own pace. There were days when she would break down in tears, overwhelmed by memories or guilt or sadness, and James would just hold her, offering comfort without judgment. And there were other days, better days, when they would spend hours exploring the city, laughing over shared stories, or lying in bed together, talking about the future with a sense of hope that had once felt impossible for Lily to imagine. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, James turned to her with a serious expression. "Lily," he began, "I've been thinking about us." Lily's heart skipped a beat, her mind racing. "What about us?" she asked cautiously. "I love you," he said simply, his voice steady. "I've loved you for a long time, and I know you've been through a lot, and I don't want to rush you into anything you're not ready for. But I want to be with you, for real. I want us to build something together, if that's what you want too." Lily stared at him, her heart swelling with emotion. She had spent so many years afraid of love, afraid of the vulnerability it required, afraid of being hurt again. But James was different. He had seen her at her worst, and still he stayed. He was offering her the kind of love she had always longed for, but never thought she deserved. "I love you too," she whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of the truth. "I'm scared, James, but I want that. I want us." A smile spread across his face, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "We'll take it one day at a time," he promised. "No rush. Just us, figuring it out together." And for the first time in her life, Lily believed that love didn't have to be painful or destructive. It could be healing. It could be good. It could be hers. In the end, Lily's journey wasn't about finding perfection or erasing the past. It was about learning to live with it, to accept the scars and the pain, and to move forward with love in her heart, both for herself and for the people who had shaped her for better or worse. And as she stood on the threshold of this new chapter in her life, hand in hand with James, she knew that whatever came next, she was ready. In the weeks that followed, Lily and James settled into a quiet, steady rhythm. Life no longer felt like a series of obstacles she had to push through, but rather a path she was learning to walk with a newfound sense of grace and openness. With James by her side, the shadows of her past no longer loomed so large. Instead, they became part of the landscape, present but no longer dominating, just pieces of a larger, more complex picture. One afternoon, as autumn leaves swirled outside their window, Lily received a call from the nursing home where her parents had spent their final days. It wasn't an unexpected call. She had been tying up loose ends with their estate, handling paperwork and arrangements. But this time, the nurse had something different to say. "I just wanted you to know," the nurse said softly, "that your mother spoke about you often, especially in her final days. She was proud of you. She didn't always remember details, but she would always say, 'My Lily is strong.'" Lily sat in silence for a moment, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions: grief, relief, and something new, gratitude. She didn't need to respond with words. She simply thanked the nurse and hung up the phone, feeling the tears welling in her eyes. For so long, she had wanted to hear those words from her mother, to know that, despite everything, she had been loved. And now, even though her mother was gone, she had received that message. It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase the pain, but it was enough. That evening, as she sat on the porch with James, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, she shared the news with him. "She was proud of me," Lily said, her voice soft but steady. "She never said it when she was alive, but she was proud of me." James reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "She shouldn't have said it sooner," he replied gently, "but you've always known that deep down, haven't you?" Lally thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "I think I did," she admitted, surprising herself. "I think I was just too angry to see it before. But now I feel like I can let that anger go. Not completely, but enough." James smiled, his thumb brushing gently over her knuckles. "That's healing, Lily. That's what it looks like." They sat in companionable silence for a while, the evening air cool and crisp around them. The world felt still, as if holding its breath in the soft glow of twilight. Lily leaned her head on James's shoulder, her heart full in a way she hadn't known it could be. She had spent so many years carrying the weight of her parents' mistakes, her own fears, and the ghosts of a childhood lost to their chaos. But now, in this moment, she felt lighter, freer. "You know," Lily said after a while, her voice barely above a whisper, "for the longest time, I didn't think I'd ever have this. not just with you, but peace. I didn't think it was possible for me. James kissed the top of her head, his voice tender as he replied, "You deserve it, Lily. You've always deserved it." She closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of the changing seasons, the warmth of James's presence beside her. "I think I'm finally starting to believe that," she said, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions, love, hope, and the bittersweet ache of acceptance. In the months that followed, Lily continued to grow, not just in her relationship with James, but within herself. She no longer ran from her past, but she also no longer let it define her. She visited her parents' graves from time to time, not out of obligation, but because she wanted to. Each visit was a quiet conversation with the memories she had once tried so hard to forget, and each time she felt a little more at peace. Her love with James deepened, their lives intertwining in ways that felt natural and right. They didn't rush into anything. There were no grand gestures or sweeping declarations. Instead, there was a quiet, steady love that grew in the everyday moments. The way James always brought her tea in the mornings, the way Lally would touch his arm when they passed each other in the kitchen, the way they laughed together over the smallest things. It was a love built on trust, on healing, on the simple joy of being together. One evening, months later, James surprised Lily with a small velvet box. They were sitting by the fireplace, the flames crackling softly, the room filled with a golden warmth. "I've been thinking about this for a while," James said, his eyes full of love as he handed her the box. "There's no rush. I don't want you to feel like you have to decide right now. But I love you, Lily. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, if that's what you want too." Lily's heart raced as she opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. Her breath caught in her throat, emotions swirling inside her. She looked up at James, her eyes shining with tears, not of fear, but of joy. She had spent so long running from love, afraid of being hurt, but now she knew she wasn't running anymore. "I want that too," she whispered, her voice filled with certainty. "I want you. I want us." James smiled, his eyes misting over as he slipped the ring onto her finger. They kissed, the kind of kiss that spoke of promises and shared futures, of love that had been earned through patience, healing, and the willingness to grow together. As they sat together in the warmth of the fire, Lily knew that this love, this peace, this sense of wholeness, was what she had been searching for all along. It hadn't come easily, and it wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly at home, not just with James, but within herself. Lally had found her way through the darkness, and now, standing in the light of her new life, she knew that whatever the future held, she would face it with love and with strength, because she had finally learned how to let go, how to forgive, and how to open her heart to the possibilities of joy.